Good morning, it's it from Zesters Lab. I haven't made a video in ages, 2 months. Thank you for all my new subscribers. I really appreciate you. And I went through a really tough time. Yes, I'm still here, alive and kicking. But our kids from Thailand came to visit. And I took the little kids to the beach with the dog, and we had an awesome time. And on our way back, just before 50 meters from home, the little boy asked if he could run with Bella Blubs, my dog, Boston Terrier. I said, yes, I could see the house. And they started running, and the little girl started running. And then all of a sudden, they just turned back and they ran her over. She's nearly 4. And in the process, she broke her leg. Yes, on my watch. Let me tell you, I went through hell and back for weeks. I mean, yes, my children, everybody said, Mom, please, it was an accident. Really, really. But I couldn't get past I felt responsible. It was terrible to get through that. Every time she's in pain, every time they struggle, because I felt responsible. And apart from that, all these, I was a very young mum with my 2 boys. They were 17 months apart. My husband was in the army at that stage. And I was a home alone mum, so yes, things happen also on my watch, or some didn't, and all those fears that accumulated in me, as a mum, you just need to keep going, so when something happens, you just push it down and you keep going. Well, all those things started to rise up also. So I had to deal with that. All I could do was just surrender. I could just surrender the pain and the hurt and the fears and the resentment towards myself and others, whatever. I could just surrender it to the life in me, because I couldn't do anything. I couldn't save myself. I couldn't feel better. Nobody could make me feel better. I was just in a very, very dark place. And as my husband always says, when I'm in a dark place, he will always say, but just practice what you preach. So yes, then I always say, I do practice what I preach. Thank you very much. I am trying to find peace and joy in the midst of the situation. I was trying to find all for good. Everything happens for good. I was trying to find that, and then it was only when all these others hurts and pains were started to surface that I realized it's for my good if I allow it. I've allowed the pain that I experienced with the accident of my granddaughter to bring out and to the surface all the pain and stuff I experienced as a young mother with my kids, and all the accidents. It was even, I've told you about it in my previous videos, where I was adopted and 6 days alone in hospital before I got adopted, and that pain of that aloneness. And in this process of my healing process now, I also remember a time when I was in hospital. I was 3 years old. I had a bladder operation. And in those days, the parents didn't stay with the kid. They had to stay alone. So I was alone, a 3-year-old, in a huge hospital, all on my own. And I can just remember the heartache every time that little bell rings to say it's time for your parents to go. They could only come and visiting hours, and then there was this little bell that was starting, and then they need to start going. And that total despair every time that bell rings, all of those things started to surface. And then I realized, I could never say goodbye. It was terrible, even from small, and when I went to university, and now when my kids started living in Thailand and we went to visit or they come, I get physically ill when I have to say goodbye. And then through this trauma, I realized why. I mean, I was left alone in the hospital as a baby. Then I was left alone for 2 weeks. I cannot remember the time in that hospital. So that was the reason why I couldn't say goodbye. So I could deal with that as these feelings of being rejected, being left alone, thrown away. As these feelings started to rise up, I could just call out to the abundant life my spiritual Father source in me, and I could just surrender the pain. I couldn't do anything else. I could just surrender the pain, allow it to flow through me, and I just gave it, surrender it into the loving hands of my spiritual Father. Call it that. I don't know what you call it. And every time when I came to that low of absolute despair, when these feelings overwhelmed me totally, I could just go into my room and just allow it to pour through me and just surrender it. And every time after that process, I experienced more and more healing and deliverance and stuff, because my eyes were open to my enemies. My enemies are all those things that keep you hostage, that happen to you, that keep your soul in bondage. Not your fault, not even other people, it just is. And we're in this realm, I realized more and more, to be healed and delivered and set free, so that we can experience peace and joy in the midst of any situation. So yes, the terrible situation with my accident with my precious little granddaughter brought me so much healing, and that is what it means. Everything will happen for your good when you allow it. I've also realized things happen. Bad things happen to good people. In this realm, we're in a realm where bad things happen. No matter how good you are, no matter how you try to be safe and keep others safe, and things happen. And but we can use it to bring healing and deliverance to us when we allow it. And I've learned through my years of walking and starting to walk with the Spirit, life in me, how to do that. And even in the midst of this really, really dark place, I haven't been in this dark a place in years. And just one incident brought me at the end of myself over and over and over again. And I thought I've lost my joy permanently. I just could not find my joy. I thought I'm never going to paint again. I'm never really going to be happy again. And then I just had, when the kids left, they left a week ago, I just felt I need to get away. And I planned this trip for hubby and me, and we went to all the places that made me happy in the past, places that really touched me. So it's just a road trip, 150 kilometers from here, and we were away for 2 days, and it was great. I really enjoyed it. It was wonderful. But my joy wasn't there. And the last morning we had breakfast at our hotel, and hubby went to buy some local beers, and as he was there in the brewery, I started walking, and there I found this antique shop, vintage antique shop. Well, I was in there like a rocket, and I couldn't believe my eyes. It was the most beautiful things in that shop. The most beautiful vintage cups and saucers with the most beautiful flowers on patterns, beautiful vintage furniture, some like this that I have in my house, inherited from my parents. And there in that shop, my joy started to rise up once again. I was so happy. And afterwards we went for coffee and tea at another place on our way home as we were driving home. And there it was this crazy coffee shop in this little town, but it was colorful with the most gorgeous things in it. Loved lots of fairies and sayings, funny sayings, and beautiful artwork. And we had a wonderful cheesecake, and we were sat there in the fairy garden, and my joy returned. I cannot tell you how wonderful it feels to have my joy back. So this morning, as I was sitting in bed and thinking about the day, I thought, you know what? Yesterday when I came home, I started gardening. I must say, a spider got hold of me. I'm so full of bites. I'm itching all over, but that's fine. And I started working in my garden again and doing nice things. And then I remember I've got these little things that a friend of mine, she gave me all her old materials and stuff when they moved, and I never used these. And I thought, you know what, I'm gonna put this on a string and just hang it in my trees. I've got these and these, I'm just gonna hang it in my garden. And I got home. I didn't buy anything at the vintage shop because I'm now at that age and at that stage. I'm now thinking, what am I going to do with them eventually? So I came home and I find my own little cups in my cupboard. My children bought this for me a couple of years ago. I think it's 4 cups and beautiful coffee things. Oh, and I love it. And you know what, when I came back actually and I look at this, I thought, this is still the most beautiful I've ever seen. It is just so gorgeous. Look at this. And I've got another one as well that comes from my grandmother, and then I didn't feel like getting it out of my cupboard. And then this, Herman's hubby's mom gave me this when she went to the old age home. Also a couple of cups and saucers. So I found what I needed to bring back my joy, to make me realize once again that I am alive, that the abundant life is still in me. It's still flowing. All is still well. So thank you that I can share this with you. So yes, I will take photos, always put it on my Facebook page and Instagram of all my things. You can go on my Instagram page and see all my photos of the local trip that the trip that we went on, because that is where I store my trips. Let's say I journal. I love journaling. And I journal it on my Facebook and my Instagram, because I can go back and I can look and I can enjoy all those lovely places once again. So yes, I thought, also while we were on this trip, I always say when someone is asking and nothing is happening, I will say, same old, same old. Some same things happening, nothing new. But you know what? Same old can turn out to be exactly what you need. So on this trip, we went to all my old favorite places. But we also found 2 new places that was really gorgeous, and I loved going, like the vintage antique shop. And there was another restaurant in the woods that was also wonderful. We were just sitting there eating lunch. So all is well. My life is still unfolding perfectly, even though I had to go through a horrific incident that really got me to the end of myself in hell a couple of times. Hell is that place, that spiritual place where you don't experience any peace and joy. It's just turmoil and pain. So I've been there a couple of times, but getting through that, I've experienced so much healing and deliverance. The most miraculous thing yet is when my kids were leaving. Previously, I've cried for 2 weeks in the past. Later, it was a week. Every time as I surrender, as it's time to go and say goodbye, I surrender the pain and the feeling to my spiritual father within my very own life. So I do it every time, but it got better and better through the years. And after I dealt with this incident of being in hospital that I told you about, I only started crying the night before. They were going and leaving. They were leaving the next morning early. I only started crying the previous night. And after crying a little bit, I could sit with my precious daughter-in-law and had a wonderful chat, and we were laughing and chatting. And that to me is a miracle. That to me is healing and deliverance. Instead of falling apart, I could cry a little, say goodbye, send them off without falling apart. And I'm thankful. Thankful that I can share my journey with you. Thankful that even though this life is not easy and we go through horrific things, I mean, this may seem to you, this wasn't as bad. What happened to me was far, far worse. And I acknowledge that. Some of you out there, some of us, go through horrific things. And it's always to me an absolute miracle when I think, how did that person get through it? I would never ever be able to get through that horrific thing that happened. But somehow we do. And because once again, inside of us, we have the abundant life that's leading us, guiding us through it. And in the process, we experience deep healing and restoration. And that is the amazing thing. When we start to walk on this walk of with the spirit life in us, that's our true life. Even though terrible things happen, we get through it victoriously and with healing and deliverance. And then we even find our peace and joy at the end. Once again, have a fantastic day. Z from Zedster's Lab. So I'm going to sew and I'm going to paint again. Oh, I went in that little coffee shop I told you about, and then I saw a painting, and immediately the urge to paint rised up in me. It overwhelmed me. I immediately wanted to go and buy a huge canvas and paint a big, big vase of flowers. So, all is well. All is well with our souls. Have a fantastic day. Love you lots. Is it from Zedster's Lab?